to the March meeting, Heartwood Chapter, Texas Master Naturalist. And welcome to people who are in the room with me and those of you who are at home online. Thank you for joining in. Would there be anyone here who this is their first meeting? Yes, we do have a couple. Very good. And Cheryl, I know you're a transfer master naturalist. And then we have one guest, I believe, over here. Okay, very good. Thank you for coming. Welcome. You're going to enjoy tonight's presentation, I think.
Oh, the screen. Okay, that's right. I remember that.
Yes, I remember this. Keyboard goes to sleep. Okay, not to sell. So the first thing we have are certifications. I put them in class year order, I hope. Last time they were in like basically no order. So we have Carson Stokes. These are certifications for the year. Carson Stokes. Carson is here, so.
We got an old guy up there.
You have she has your
Oh, thank
50.
you.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. And we have Cream. Cream happen to be here? No? Okay. And so Cream has also certified this year. Yay. We have Jay Rubens. Jay Rubens here? No. So congratulations to Jay. And we have Melissa Schubert. Okay. We have Mike McGee. Mike McGee not in the room tonight. Maybe he's online. Congratulations. And Cynthia Rubens. Cindy Rubens. Okay. We also have Gail McConnell. Yay, thank you. And Steve Ellison. And I think the last one we have is Diana Philpotts. She had a milestone last month. This is a certification this time. So thank you very much. If anyone is not pleased with their picture, then you can take a better one and send it in. And I will use that. But otherwise, I'm just, digging around, trying to find one I can find.
I have to do it once a year.
So if you don't like your photo, it's up to you to get me another one. Okay, so I have a helpful slide here. It's like a gradient color. Oh, well.
It is on that.
Interesting. Okay, so this is a special slide because it's coming up. There's a training that will be March 20th at 10 a.m. Probably at Jones Forest unless we can't use that classroom for some reason. So I would like Gerald to come up and say a few words about why we're having another training for the Bat Chats in Huntsville. We already had one training that Diana Foss did for us in. We need some more volunteers. So I'm going to have Gerald come up and say a few words. It's a motivational speaker here.
All right, thank you. How many here are already on Treston's team besides Jennifer? Anybody? Almost. Okay. Well, almost needs to be for sure. No, I'm just saying. Anyway, we have started. I've actually been working before I came to Heartwood last year. I've been working with Diana Foss back there with the Wallbridge Bat team. I don't even know, long time for quite a few years. But recently, when I became part of this, and we took the field trip to Huntsville last year, I got interested in that. I always tell people that now I live just north of Tomball, and it's actually easier for me to get to Huntsville on a Friday afternoon than it is to get to downtown Houston. So any of you in that same boat, we could sure use you. Yeah, that training, I don't know much about it. Jennifer may know more, Dinah may know more about the training that Tristan's gonna do on the 20th. But it's just getting awareness. We have basically two groups, if you will. It's one big group, but two different activities that go along with this. Jennifer's been spending a lot of her time and a couple other people with doing surveys, see what time the bats come out, how late do they come out, do they come out in cold weather, do they come out in the rain, and what's the weather like. And then the other part of that is actually going to be interaction with the public. There are a few moving parts with the bat colony in Huntsville. Some of you may have heard about that from last year. If you go back to the Heartwood newsletter from July or August, I did a big article in there about the whole scenario. So we're trying to get the public relations side, the wildlife side of the bats known to Huntsville. So we're working with that. And any of you that might be interested, we're not talking about a big commitment. 1 or 2 nights a month. Tristan has set up a Google form and for some of the forms that we need to do the surveys. He's also set up a Google Calendar. If anybody's interested in going and doing those chats, if we get a good, decent team like we have at Wall Bridge, we may do those chats on Friday nights and Saturday nights. I now understand Jennifer was out there on Monday night doing a survey, and there were actually people there interested, and she ended up doing an impromptu bat check. So that kind of thing is going to happen initially until we get things going with that. So if I have any questions real quick that I can answer in the short run regarding that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. So I've asked if you're interested and think you want to come to this training March 20th, that's a Monday morning, would you just please email me so that I would know?
Where's it gonna be?
Okay, so I think Jones Forest at the classroom there, unless we can't get in. Yes, Jaden might know more.
I just checked, it's available if you want me to reserve it.
Oh, excellent. Okay. We have somebody with us that, yes. Thank you, Jane. Yes, March 20th at Jones Forest in the classroom there. Okay, the last thing there in orange, so I wouldn't forget, is this is the last call for volunteers for the March Mart booth at Mercer Botanical Gardens. I know there are some people signed up for this already, but we have too many open slots to go forward with this project. I need to tell them tomorrow whether we're coming or not. And so right now we're not coming. I'll have to cancel our booth, which is okay, but that's the facts. So if you are wanting to do this, then you'll need to email me like tonight, or see me tonight if you're here, or email me tonight if you want to. The date is March 24th and 25th. Yes, March 24th and March 25th.
I think we just do it one day though. Is it just the 25th that we do?
I don't know, I had, both of them are on the Silent Genius, both days.
Okay.
One is this,
When is the nighttime for the people who are?
That's Thursday.
That's Thursday. Oh, that's Thursday.
Friday
Yeah.
and Saturday are for the public.
Friday and Saturday for the public, Thursday, right, you're right, there is a private kind of thing, that's Thursday.
VIP exclusive, there's not many people.
Okay, so we have a lot of holes, so we'll see how that goes. Okay?
Unless you're back now.
Right, the next thing is chapter operating handbook approval. We've talked about this a little bit before, and in the bulletin, you've read that you need to look at that document that's on our website, and the proposed changes were there. So we need to take a vote now for the membership that there were just really some minor changes. It's just updating, basically. Every 3 or 5 years, I think, we're going to update these governing documents just to, because they need to be. So this is the year for the chapter operating handbook approval. So for those of you who are watching online, do we raise hand or no, we just say just nays, right?
Just names.
Okay.
It's easy to count names. and it's-
Yes. So before we take the vote, does anybody have anything they need clarified in this regard that's in the room or online? You could put it in the chat. Okay, nobody? So we will now take a vote to approve the minor changes to the chapter operating handbook. If I can get a motion. Darla Oakman makes the motion to approve the handbook. So I'm looking for a second. Sarah Freeman, second. I guess I'll somebody else. Okay, so all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, good. So now we can make that official and tell the state that we've done it, which will be excellent. They've been looking for that. Thank you so much. Okay, so advanced training highlight. Carolyn's going to get rid of that bar at the bottom. Yes, I don't know why these things keep, in fact.
You ready?
Good.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right, so we highlight something every month, and Denise Hall has put this in here for us. And about the Native Plant Society, you can read it there. On March 11th, that's coming up very soon, so we have it
Yeah, this Saturday.
Saturday. So we have it highlighted here in case you missed it. So if you look at the calendar, it will be listed there.
Just tap.
There we go. All right, here's a volunteer opportunity that's also March 11th. This is for the city of Montgomery. We need 2 more volunteers really to adequately staff this booth, Texas Master Naturalist booth. You will not be giving away the trees. That's already being done by the Texas Forest Service. But we will be there and at the Montgomery County Center, Community Center, I'm sorry. And there's the address there. We need 2 more volunteers. That would be good. We may have to back out of this one too if we don't get that. So if you're interested, then thank you. Can you see me after the program? Oh, we have one volunteer for sign up. Thank you very much. So be sure to see me after this and put in the chat if you're online and you would like to sign up. That's okay. You can still do that. Put your request in the chat and we'll take that down. Okay, that one thing behind there, I forgot to move that. Okay, so here's a special request that Friends of Texas Wildlife wanted me to display for you guys. It is, as you can see it there, Spring Break Discovery Days. It's really just an advertising, something they would like to have done. This is not a volunteer opportunity for us. It's really just an announcement. So I'll leave that just for a second. It's a little mini camp. I'm sure that'll be very fun for the kids. And they are one of our sponsors, Friends of Texas Wildlife, so we need to support them. All right, and on another note from the same place as well, open house, Friends of Texas Wildlife, Saturday, April 15th, 10 to 2. Here again, this would be a booth opportunity for Texas Master Naturalists. We've done this in the past, and all the table and chairs and all that is provided. Oh, and lunch. I don't think that's a spoiler alert, but so there's a little perk there. Rain or shine, they'll be having this. So you can come out and see all the animals. It'd be a really good time. And some of you may already volunteer with Friends of Texas Wildlife in another capacity. And that would be good too. This will be, if it's not at the moment, it'll be on the calendar very soon. And a sign up genius for that, since it's a booth, okay? Now here is a announcement for next month's meetings. It's kind of a twofold type of thing. On April 12th, which is our regular meeting night. Yeah, here, it will be here at AgriLife in Conroe, the building AgriLife. So we'll have Craig Hensley talking to us about using iNaturalist. Now, April 13th, the very next day, we're going to go out and actually put what we've learned into practice and help with the BioBlitz, the 2023 City Nature Challenge. Okay, so we can just turn right around and use what we've learned. We need to sign up for that. We'll decide. There's not a sign up for the April 13th portion of that yet, but you can keep your eye open for that.
Where's it gonna be held? What's the area?
George Metro Nature Preserve.
Oh, that's-
Yes.
What area? I mean, the whole, cover the whole preserve.
Right, okay, I'm not exactly sure where we'll meet. We'll try to add that information. Yes, we need to add more specifically where to meet up at 8 o'clock. Okay, so we are ready for tonight's presentation. We have Suzy Briseno. She is a Heartwood Chapter Texas Master Naturalist. And when Suzy moved to the Houston area, she became immersed in gardening and fascinated with the local bird and pollinator fauna, with particular interest in hummingbirds, butterflies, and bees. Sounds like a lot of us. Gradually, she transformed most of her suburban yard in Spring, Texas into a wild bird and pollinator habitat, building 5 small pollinator gardens. Suzy has acquired both a certified wildlife habitat and monarch way station certificate. Soon thereafter, she received her Texas Master Gardener, Texas Master Naturalist, and Master Volunteer Entomology Specialist certificates. To promote education about wildlife conservation, Suzy writes articles for Master Gardener and Naturalist newsletters and in community newspapers. She also edits Facebook pages for Texas bumblebees and gives presentations to Master Gardeners and Naturalists, garden clubs, and local schools on pollinators and especially the 1,500 or so Texas native bees. Welcome, Suzy, and thank you for agreeing to speak to us this evening.
Now, do I need to speak into the microphone to use for and you? Well, in my real life, I'm a singer. I have 2 degrees in music and voice performance. So classical singing, and opera singer. Which I'm retired from that, so now I like to spend a lot of my time in nature. And they, the birds and the bees sing to me all the time. It's a wonderful chorus.
Is this your first time?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is it right in your advance?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Perfect.
But there's something
Still.
you are screen sharing. Okay.
Cool. If it pops up, I'll speak behind you. Okay.
Okay. I've got a few posters around here. I've got another one over here of Texas bumblebees. I've got a few books that I think would be really good. Can you hear me now? Would be really good resources for you. We'll get to that in a minute. All right, I'm going to start this with a quiz. I know some of you have heard this before, so you know the answer. Well, let everybody else guess. Go ahead and shout out the answer. Okay. True or false? All bees in North America are native. How many different bee species are there in North America? What answers do I have? 1,500? Anybody else? A lot. That's, you get the prize. Bees descended from A, flies, wasps, or flies and wasps descended from bees. Which gender stings more frequently and aggressively? Males, because they're larger and meaner. Their stings are equal. Only female bees can sting. I hear some right answers. Which is the better pollinator, the female or the male bee? True or false? All bees make honey. You know everything already. Okay. False. 99.9% are native, unlike the imported honeybee. We've got actually about 4,000 native bees, wild bees in North America. And this number, I overlooked this, 1,100 it's now 1,500 from the last I've heard from people who actually go out and count bees. And bees descended from wasps, but bees are vegetarian. They figured out a long time ago it was easier just to sip the flowers and hang out, get a little nectar and pollen, instead of killing other insects and spiders and carrying them back to the nest or parasitizing them. And the females, let's see, only the female bees can sting. Same with the whole order Hymenoptera. It's only the female ants that sting, it's only the female wasps who can sting, because it's a modified ovipositor. And females are hairier than males, and only females. And only a few species of bees make honey. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and I tell them I study native bees, wild bees, and I go on, and sometimes they sit through a whole lecture, and at the end they say, well, do you have any honey at your house, or can we come by and get some wax? And they don't want to hear it. It doesn't make any sense to them, because most of what they hear in media, in any kind of publication, is they say bee and they be honeybee. It kind of annoys me, but okay. What is cross-pollination? The female is going to fly to a flower and to get some nectar. She burrows in, and while she does that, the pollen from the stamen of the flower gets on her body, and there's some electrostatically charged hairs that she has. Then she flies to another flower at the same type rather, and she deposits some of that pollen there. So male to female, and she's getting nectar. She's really going after nectar, but certain bees do collect pollen. Not all bees collect pollen either. So most fruits, vegetables, ornamental plants depend on insects, primarily bees, occasionally other animals, to move pollen from flower to flower. And here's an example. Let's see if I can do this. At the top, this is an apple that's been incompletely pollinated. This is the carpel, and most apples should have 5 seeds on each side. And if you see something like this, it's incompletely pollinated. So it's not as good as it would be if it were pollinated. And sometimes, with this instance, the cucumber comes out really small, misshapen, or they fail to set fruit at all. And they're not going to make seeds that way. So here's some fruits and vegetables that are pollinated by bees. Sorry about that. Oops. So, I think it's pretty fair to say 1/3 of every bite we eat is because of the bee, but it's not only a honeybee. And there would, I mean, if you can imagine a grocery store without all this good produce, it would be pretty grim. It would be like COVID. Remember that? So pollination is essential. Thousands of animals depend on foods, nuts, seeds, pollinated plants produced. It's not only the humans who would suffer. Another kind of pollination, oh, this one was entomophily, pollinated by insects. Then we have anemophily, pollinated by wind. So most of the grain crops, corn, wheat, oats, rye, barley, rice too, are pollinated by wind. But indirectly, wind pollinated crops have had a big impact on the pollinators, and that's because of monocropping. You'll see a few square acres, there's nothing but corn, nothing but wheat, nothing but rice, and there are no flowers there for any insects to get food from. That and also urbanization. So they're in trouble. So here, when we talk about animals that depend on the fruits and nuts, we've got fruit eaten by Baltimore Orioles, robins, cedar waxwings. A lot of beetles will eat, and other insects will eat the fruit bats, possums, other marsupials. And I just think he is the cutest little guy. Don't you? You know, as long as they don't turn to the side and hiss at you, they're so cute from the front. So seeds and nuts. Some insects, birds, especially nuthatches, woodpeckers, blue jays, the rodents, chipmunks, possums, and then foliage. If we didn't have pollination, we wouldn't have more trees with leaves so that the deer could eat them, horses, gorillas, of course we don't have those here, zebras, pandas. So again, thousands of animals depend on foods, nuts, seeds, pollinated plants produce. It's essential. So what happened a long time ago, 40 years ago or so, was China used such intensive use of pesticide, mostly broad spectrum that would kill everything, indiscriminately on orchards, apples and pear trees. So there were no bees left, there were no flies or wasps, or they had to climb up into the tree, darn it. I'm not very apt. And with this long wand with a brush at the end of it, and touch it from one blossom to the next, to the next, to the next, really tedious. And that's what that looks like up close. That, in the long run, I'm sure that costs a lot more than losing a few crops to pest. So again, most plants, agricultural, horticultural, wildflowers depend on pollen being transferred from flower to flowers. And of all the pollinators, insects are the most important. There are about 1,500 different vertebrate species who also pollinate, but not as efficiently as insects. And I wanted to include this because I really like this. I think it's a beautiful picture. I think bees are beautiful. Am I strange?
How do they know it's sleeping?
How do you know he's sleeping, Susie?
Oh, how did I know?
Yeah.
See how he's curled up? That's probably a male, because a lot of times the females won't let the males back into the nest after they're born. So they sleep outside, they curl up in a flower. One time I found one underneath a leaf that was just clinging on. It was almost dark. Poor guys. It's kind of like, when your wife sends you out to sleep on the couch.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So we have specialists in the bee, within bees. We've got monolecty, so single species mostly. And one example is osmia, or a blue orchard bee. Will only go for that kind of crop. Oligolecty, a little bit in between. A lot of times sunflowers, diadasia species, and polylecty, foraging unrelated plants. So a generalist. Honeybees are generalists. Bumblebees are generalists. But a lot of the other bees, the bees that most people don't know anything about, are specialists. And somehow my slide fell out of here, but I had a picture of a squash bee. You can see a squash bee curled up in a blossom. Squash bees wake up before the sun is up, and they're busy pollinating. So a lot of times they'll feed a honeybee to the squash blossoms. Okay, Hymenoptera. Characteristics, anyways, long antennae, ovipositor. Rare characteristics, social behaviors. Most bees are not social, like honeybees are. And honey production is extremely rare. Basic biology there. But one thing that in the field that will set off whether you know that this is a bee or a fly or a wasp, is that bees have large eyes on the sides of their heads. They have a long tongue. Some bees have shorter tongues, some medium, some long tongues. Bumblebees have long tongues. And they've got 2 pairs of wings, which you're not going to see in the field. And they've got specially branched hairs in their hind legs, an area where they've got some stiff hairs that are like a concave basket, and they'll pack pollen into that. That's darn it. That's a picture. Where did I go? Right here, that little blob on the back of her leg. So that is the pollen that she's gathered. She'll go to a flower, get pollen all over her, and then with all 6 legs, she'll broom it off and pack it into a little ball and add a little bit of nectar and put it in that little concave area. Take it back to her nest. This is for the social bees. Okay, Scopy and pollen trappers. Here's another example. And it depends on what she's been foraging. See how that yellow of that orange blob, pretty clear. And for some bees, they have their scopa, the specially branched hairs, on the underside of their abdomens. Some under their armpits. That's a close-up. And let's see, mining bees have slight positive electrostatic charge on their throat that attracts negatively charged pollen. So they've got so many advantages over other animals. They know where to go to get it. They've got special hairs to get it, and they've got this little electrostatic charge going on. Some are a lot hairier than others. Bumblebee, probably the hairiest, like little flying teddy bears. Did it again. Cuckoo bee, sparse hairs. So cuckoo bees, we'll talk about this later, but much like the cuckoo birds and also the brown cowbird, right? They lay their eggs in another bird's nest. These bees lay their eggs in another bee's nest, and they don't need to collect pollen, so that's why her abdomen and the rest of her is so smooth. I'm so sorry. I'm not used to holding this mic. All right. Some Batesian mimicry. Here's a fly that has evolved to have the same coloration as a honeybee and maybe a bumblebee, and that will keep predators away. They're afraid they might be stung. Flies can't sting though. They can bite. So this one mimics the honeybee so well, they're called drone flies. Okay. Female antennae are very long, but shorter than those of males. They have compound eyes on either side, and they have three little ocelli for detecting movement. Now, these lenses, 6,900 lenses in the compound eyes, they process images about 1,500 times as fast as human eyes will. So that's one reason it's hard to take a picture of them or try to catch them. They're really fast. Some are faster than others. And this is one way they see flowers better. Usually, we see this spectrum of light. A little bit of UV, a lot of infrared, whereas bees and some other insects see a lot of UV light and not so much infrared. Some mammals also see UV, and I just learned this last night, cats and dogs. I'm not really sure why, but. So this is what insects will see. We see this, and the insect sees this. So she's got this landing pad, this, oh, here, this is where the nectar is. Don't waste your energy flying around. Here's another one. We see this, they see that. I think they're both really pretty. Okay, telling males from females. Males are often a lot smaller than females. They have longer antennae, no stinger, which you can't really see unless you dissect it. Often white or yellow facial hair. Females are larger, scopy, the pollen carrying structures they've got, which is hard to see here, but they have different coloration too. So there's some sexual dimorphism going on. These are mason bees, and I think they're very pretty. Lookalikes. This is a crab wasp. This is a robber fly, a syrphid fly, another type of syrphid fly, a bee fly. And has anyone seen one of these?
Yeah.
They're really cool. Hummingbird, clearwing moth. They're way too big to confuse with a bee. I thought it was a hummingbird, or I wasn't really sure what it was when I saw it. But I'll tell you some other tricks to tell the difference. Bees versus flies. One pair of wings, short, stout antennae, right here. Broad attachment of the abdomen to the thorax, right here. No pollen carrying structures. Hairs are usually sparse because they don't collect pollen. And they have short sponge-like mouth parts, which you're not going to see. Bees, the two pair of wings, a long antennae, skinny constructed waist, and some are skinnier than others. Pollen carrying structures, she's carrying that underneath. And they're usually pretty hairy. And most of them have much longer tongues than a fly would. Now I think actually wasps look a lot more, there's more confusion with wasps and bees. Why is that doing that? No pollen carrying structures. Body hairs are unbranched, more shiny, usually scarce, they're carnivores. See this bee? You can't really see much hair on her. If anything, she's got these little bristles on her legs. But compare that to this bee with a long tongue, long antennae, very hairy. But wasps are the closest relatives to bees. Like I said, because they're not very efficient pollen collectors. Vegetarian. Bees are vegetarian. Wasps are carnivorous. So they're either going to take an insect, macerate it, tuck it back to the nest to feed to the young, or they'll sting an insect and deposit the eggs. And we know where that goes. Okay, what makes this not a bee?
Short antenna.
One set of wings.
Hard to tell under there, but this short, stubby antenna are clubby or stubby, and the legs, not much hair there. You can't tell anything about the wings, but. Okay, what makes this a bee? Very hairy legs.
Long antenna.
Mm-hmm. And what about that right there? Long tongue. Okay. And what about this? What makes this a bee? Mm-hmm, good. So the same thing. Okay, a little about honeybees. I love honeybees. But honeybees have a caste system with a queen, multiple females, a few drones, and their colony can reach up to 50,000 workers. There's no other bee that does that, especially not in North America. The queen lays 1,000 eggs a day. Honeybees can travel over 3 miles an hour to collect resources. They're not native. They're introduced to America from European settlers, Africa, Asia. They're medium size and build. Only species with hair on the eyes. And you can't really, there, right around there, hairy eyeballs. But they do have these pollen carriers, pollen baskets. So there are, queen is really big. I don't see very many drones. I see a lot of workers. That's what I see mostly. Again, their colony can reach up to 50,000 workers. So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but are honeybees at risk of extinction? Nobody?
Yes,
Yes. Why?
insecticides and poison.
I would say no.
All insects. What other reasons? Yes? Mm-hmm. But imagine this, since honeybees are actively managed, beekeepers who track their size, they hold the colony, there's always some that look after them. And the global honey market is $9 billion. How much do you think they spend on bumblebees or metallic sweat bees or mason bees? Or definitely there was a colony collapse disorder, and the varroa mite and all kinds of things affect honeybees, but they're not, as a species, they're not going to go extinct. That would be wiping out the whole species. Whereas, and yes, and this is a good point, when hives are near neonicotinoid treated crops and they start dwindling, for example, their advocates speak up. We hear about it in the news. Honeybees tend to hog spotlight. Like I said before, most media reports on bees assume there's one species. Many folks are backing the movement. I mean, how many celebrities have installed beehives on their properties? How is that going to save the bees? It will save some honeybees, but some people will say it's the equivalent of farming chickens to save wild birds. So if you think of honeybees, they're a little like livestock. I mean, we use them. We tell them where to go, we tell them where they're going to sleep. We control so many aspects of their lives, and then we bus them. I mean, we put them in trucks and send them halfway across the country. And then we steal their honey and their wax. I don't know. I did some beekeeping a little bit for a little while, and I noticed that every time I would come in with my white suit on, there would be a number of stingers all over me because they attacked me because I was a foreign, they thought I was going to threaten the hive. So how many bees died because I was trying to play like a beekeeper? Okay. Like I said, so these bees are really, she has some stripes, she has the big eyes, the antennae, but she's really nothing like a honeybee. This bee either, the cactus bee, or this one, the leafcutter bee. So the natives have no perennial colonies. If you think about honeybees, their colonies will persist from year after year, maybe up to 5 years. When you think about a bumblebee colony, which is one of the few social bees of native bees, her colony only lasts a year. So annual versus perennial. Let's see, there are a few managed species of bumblebees, a few alfalfa leaf cutting bees and blue orchard bees, but other than that, 90% of all bees are solitary. They don't live in a colony. They have young, they leave them to hatch on their own and fend for themselves. Very different from honeybees. This is just one poster with a sample of all the different sizes and shapes and colors that native bees come in. And you probably have quite a few of these in your backyard, but you haven't noticed them. So again, over 4,000 species in North America. Here's some picture of, this is one carpenter bee, the one that we're all familiar with. This is another carpenter bee. While we're talking about carpenter bees, this is a southern carpenter bee on fennel and sweat bee. So 1,100, make that 1,500 native species of bees in Texas, 90% solitary. The solitary native bees do not defend their nest. They don't have 50,000 children to defend. And they're not likely to sting. They can sting. Did you have a question?
What, are we allowed to ask? Or we-
Yeah.
So the carpenter bee, is that the one underneath our wraparound porch?
Yeah,
Look at these things that drill holes,
right.
and so that's the carpenter bee?
That's one of them.
Okay.
The large, the Xylocopa virginica is that one. It's a cousin of this one right here. Actually, they kind of look like bumblebees, but I'll show you how to tell the difference. Okay, so the fiction is that all bees sting. Well, first of all, none of the males sting, only the females. And you'd really have to try to swat them, scream at them, try to stomp on them to get them to sting you. Now, bumblebees, on the other hand, can sting, and they can sting repeatedly. They don't have a barbed stinger like a honeybee does. I don't know why honeybees have a barbed stinger, because it kills her after she stings. A bumblebee's stinger is more like a hypodermic needle, so just sting over and over. But they're so gentle. I hang out with them in my yard all the time, and nobody's ever tried to sting me. Okay, body shape. So these bees can be as small as 4 millimeter up to 25 millimeter. And they come in different body shapes: slender, moderate, robust. Males versus females again. And they look different coloration, still have the same stripes, but you've got the antenna difference and maybe the time difference and no pollen carrying structures, but you'd have to study this to know that this, just like with birds, a lot of times you think all cardinals are red and you find out, wait a minute, there's another one. Doesn't look like that at all. The male and female here, and males do look a little different. They've got some different measurings, say in the eye space, between the eye and the mandible, and also the clavius here at the mouth part. And the mandibles, sometimes the mandibles have teeth. So another thing, if you're trying to figure out, you're in the backyard, you're out in the field, you see a bee, and you think, well, wait a minute, I think that looks like this, but does that even exist in this area? And does it fly at this time? So you not only have to consider the shape and the color and the size, but the different time and the different place where you might be. And also what the floral associations are. So, three broad groups of native bees. Ground nesting, which most of them are, 70% are, and they're solitary. Cavity nesting, and social bees, like this bumblebee. Just take a look at her egg sacs. They're round and kind of messy and look very different from what honeybee, where she would lay her eggs in those hexagonal cells. We've got 9 different species of bumblebees in Texas. In this area, you're going to see the American bumblebee, Bombus pennsylvanicus, maybe, well, definitely the common eastern bumblebee, impatiens, and maybe the golden northern, I'm not golden northern, the Grisiocolus, the brown belted bumblebee. So this is from, and I'll show you later, but there's a Bumblebee ID app on the phone or on the computer. You can take a picture, submit it, and then you go through and you say, well, does it have this kind of spot? How many stripes does it have? And there are experts there that will help you identify the bumblebee. Okay, that's my backyard. I just think they're so cute, that little flying teddy bears. Very sweet. Brown belted. Common eastern, which have the spots on their backs right there. And that's a male American bumblebee. He comes out, they'll come out, a few males at the end of the summer, ready to mate with the new queens. And they have a different coloration, just yellow there instead of the stripes. And they don't allow them back in the nest. Quickly, the life cycle. So the queen hibernates over the winter. In early spring, she'll emerge. She'll fly around and look for a suitable nesting place. And then she'll construct some little wax honey pots. She has a little bit of wax and a little bit of honey, and she lays her eggs on top of them. And then she'll incubate them until the first brood is born. And then after the first brood is born, they'll take over the housekeeping. She lays some more eggs. She pretty much doesn't go out of the nest after that. And then toward the end of the summer, the queen will die off, but she's already given, she's laid some eggs that are going to be new queens and also males. And that is a little bit like honeybees. She dies, then the new queen mates with the male dies, the queen goes and finds another, I can't even talk tonight, I'm so sorry, another place to hibernate. So it's an annual cycle. Here's a newly emerged bumblebee taken by a friend of mine. She said she was walking in her yard and she looked down and there was this part of the grass that was just vibrating and rumbling, and she realized it was a bumblebee nest. And that's what they look like when they first come out. They're kind of new and shiny. Here's another nest. And again, they don't store nectar or pollen like honeybees do. They use it immediately. They're not going to have a giant store that they're going to go back to and take from later. They pollinate, bumblebees pollinate clover, tomato, a lot of plants in the nightshade family. So tomatoes, eggplants, actually tobacco, the plant nightshade. And how they do this is with their mandibles, they grab onto the anther of the plant. See this plant, see how deep the corolla is? That's too deep for a lot of other bees to probe. So she'll grab onto that and then shake it violently, and this pollen just goes all over the place. She gets it on her body, she goes to the next flower. There are some commercial bumblebee farms, greenhouses, which I don't know. worry about a lot of bumblebees being forced to be in one place and exchanging viruses and bacteria. I don't want what happened to the honeybees to happen to other bees. This is another bee, green metallic sweat bee also does that with the nightshade. Here's one, black and gold, thistle. So bumblebees are in trouble. Of the 9 species that we mentioned we had, there's one, the American bumblebee that we have in this area. They haven't seen them in Missouri for years. And that used to be the most common bumblebee there was. So that's a whole species that has maybe disappeared, that is in danger. Some of the other species, well, one of them, let's see, B. aphanis, the rusty patch bumblebee, has already gotten protection under the Endangered Species Act. They're very rare. And a lot of them have disappeared over the past 15 years, mostly in the bread belt, the breadbasket, Missouri, the Midwest, Iowa, because of intensive agriculture. There are not as many flowers left to nectar from. Their habitat has been destroyed. Okay. A lot of these, I'm just going to show pretty pictures. It's very pretty. Most native bees nest underground. And they have an annual life cycle, like the bumblebee. Did it again. Yeah. Okay. So she's going to lay an egg. She's going to dig a hole, lay an egg. She'll give a little bowl of pollen with nectar here. She'll lay the egg on top. It hatches. It goes through 4 or 5 instars. And then it spends most of its time underground, as much as a year. And then it will emerge the next spring and fly for maybe a few weeks to a month. Then we also have cavity nesting bees. 30% of the native species nest in solid plant stems. You can make bee houses like that, but a lot of times they'll just use existing beetle holes in some old wood. And that's some nesting in a stem.
Question.
Yes.
Okay, so Susie, when you have one that's cavity dwelling and it starts laying eggs at the back, you would think that that one would grow faster than the last ones, right? So
You would think.
you would think, but they time it so that the ones that are last laid are the first.
Well, the last one, the one nearest the opening, is actually a male. Because the females are more valuable. Because a lot of times wasps will try to take over those tubes. So that she'll lay a female, a partition, a male, a partition, a female, and the last one's going to be a male. Sorry, guys.
So the ones that pop out, at the very end, those actually grow faster than the ones.
Yeah,
That's so bizarre.
I'm not really sure why, but that's a good question.
Can you kind of restate that for the people online? They may not have heard Carol.
Oh, so Sharon was asking, the bees that were put in the back of the tunnel have to wait for their sisters and brothers to grow. And she grows more slowly than the one in front of her and the one in front of her and him. And the last one that emerges is going to be a male. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the first one that emerges is going to be a male.
The what?
The first one that emerges will be a
Yes,
male.
yes.
Said the last one. The
I'm
first
sorry. The first one who emerges. The last one who
one
was
is female. They're
laid.
protected.
The last egg that was laid is male.
This is when.
Somebody came in.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Here's another type of carpenter bee, a southern carpenter bee, which I think is really cool. Zytocopa micans. And look at these green swirly eyes. It kind of looks like those eyes are right on top of their head, but they're very big, and they go all the way down the side of the head. Here's another view. I see these a lot in my backyard. Yeah. See more females though. They're not as colorful. In the bee world, it seems like a lot of times sometimes the female males are more colorful than the males, but sometimes it's just the other way around. You never know. Okay, so here's a female. She doesn't, little drab. Here's another. This is another carpenter bee missionary. It's Xylocopa missionary. And again, really cool eyes, long tongue. Can't get my fingers to work. Longhorn bee. This one's kind of easy to identify. It's about the size of a honeybee and about the same coloration, but this is a really long antennae. Pretty eyes. There are the chaps on the back, the scopa that keeps all the pollen. And here's another one, longhorn bee. Mining or plastering bee. The plaster bee uses mud to seal the nest. Mining bees are a lot of times associated, very similar. And these nest in the lawn, but they don't sting. Green sweat bees. These are my second favorite kinds of bees. I just love this color, this iridescent green, sometimes blue, sometimes with stripes. And they're very tiny, very tiny. Sometimes people will confuse them with a little fly. But if you see them in just the right light, it's wonderful. They're generalist. Sometimes some of these is confusing. There are various sweat bees that are in different genera. Some are attracted to the sweat on your arm, and they might give you a tiny little sting. Others are not. So I'm not sure. See, a lot of this, there's so many different bees, and there are not enough biologists or trained volunteers to actually identify them and to catalog them. And so many of them just look little and black and really hard. I spent 40 hours at this bee identification course, and we spent the whole time on it with a microscope, dissecting the bees, looking at this and that, and trying to come up with an ID. And the teacher wasn't much help at all. So if anyone's interested in doing that, ID is not really my forte, but some people just love it. And we need it because we need to know how many bees there are that we actually do need to save. So these bees nest in rotting wood, pre-existing tunnels. Some are ground nesting. Here's another one, very beautiful. Another one. This guy takes great pictures. Another metallic sweat bee. Michael took this. And here we've got a Halictus sweat bee here. And next to a green metallic. They're about the same size, and they have the stripes on the abdomen, but you see this metallic green thorax and head. Small dark bees, this is probably the majority of all the bees. Leafcutter bees. Does anybody know about leafcutter bees? No. Sometimes they're farmed. They're really good pollinators of alfalfa. They have the scopy on the bottom of their abdomen. And some of them nest in pre-existing cavities, artificial beetle tunnels, hollow plants, hoses, pipes. And they make these beautiful little circles in your plants. They have, compared to other bees, they have really large mandibles, stronger mandibles than most bees. So they can cut out these circles. And she's gonna roll it up, take it back to the nest to line it. That's a close-up shot. These are teeth. These are called teeth. And they're formidable. These are the close-ups. I saw some of this on my beauty berry, and I've also seen it on passion vine and crossvine. And there's a good shot of her with the leaf going back to her little nest. So this is what her nest is going to look like. She's going to roll up all these little pieces of leaves and put the babies inside, partition them also with the leaves, and then seal it with a kind of a cap at the end. And this is what it looks like inside the nest. So different larvae, and they look like they're in different stages of development, maybe different instars. Another leaf cutter, very, very fluffy, hairy right there. And they're about the size of a honeybee. A lot of people confuse them with honeybees. But if you look closely to the abdomen, you'll see that her hairs are below her abdomen rather than on the backs of her legs, like a honeybee. Here's another one. Okay, so in the early 20th century, it said that the leafcutter bees saved the alfalfa industry, the seed industry. Alfalfa is high in protein for livestock. What happened is that these mixes and the production decreased because of loss of habitat and to agricultural development and also urbanization. So alfalfa leaf cutters came in and extensively pollinated the area and the other crops. So that the farmers actually brought these bees in. Mason bees, blue orchard bees. They partition their nest with mud instead of leaves. And they're usually small, dark blue or green, metallic, wide bodies and heads. They're actually pretty small. Sometimes people confuse these with flies. And they have the scopy on their abdomen. Blue orchard, yeah. So they're really good pollinators of fruit crops, especially apples, cherries, plum, and they're tolerant of wet, cold weather, which I think honeybees are not so crazy about. USDA did some research a few years ago comparing mason bees, the production from mason bees and that of honeybees. And they found that for an acre of apples, it took 250 mason bees as opposed to 15,000 to 20,000 honeybees to pollinate the same orchards. I don't know why they're more effective than honeybees, but that's kind of cool. There's a close up, and she's a nest. She nests in tunnels, holes in wood. Okay, cuckoo bees. Let's talk about that before. See how bare these are compared to most bees? Not very many hairs. Shiny abdomen there, kind of shiny there, because she doesn't need to collect pollen. And she does collect nectar, but she lays her eggs in a host bee's nest, and then her eggs will hatch first, and they'll eat her provisions, and sometimes they'll eat the eggs of the host bee, sorry. And sometimes they'll just go in and kill the queen, the mother too. So kleptoparasitism. And they also have larger mandibles that they use to kill the host larvae. They lay their bees in, female keys of bees. So 20% of all species of bees are cuckoos, and that's supposed to indicate a healthy ecosystem. Now, most bees nest in the ground, and a lot of times these nests look like ant nests, like here. And this is what it looks like up close. She'll dig a tunnel up to 3 feet deep, and then make a left turn, make a little circle there, lay an egg there and maybe there, and here's another view of it. And again, she puts a pollen ball with pollen with some nectar, lays the egg on top, they hatch, and they molt through different instars. So to encourage these, keep areas of bare ground, limit tilling, clear away any plants from well-drained slopes, no-till farming, bunch grasses. I have tried this in my yard, and it's hard to find a bare area that would be dry. They need drier soil, maybe sandy, maybe part loamy. So it's best if you have an area like that, don't try to plant something over it. So what we need to maintain at least 3 kinds of flowering plants, preferably native, spring, fall, and summer. No flowers, no bees, no bees, no flowers. And we need protection from pesticides and mechanical disturbance. This was my house a few years ago, before my husband got hold of it. No, he's in the back. I don't like those weedy plants. Some habitat that provides a food source and plants for nectar and pollen. Shelter, nesting sites and materials. Water. So you really need to have, they're kind of the same things that you'll provide if you want birds to be in your yard. You need to feed them, water them, give them some place for shelter, some place to nest. And try to maintain at least 3 kinds of flowering plants, spring, fall, summer. So this was a scheme that I guess some in the plant sales industry in the United States took on, that say gardeners, it's the #1 hobby in America. And if we all had, whatever we have, if I have a 1/4 acre and I dedicate some of that to be a space where bees can nest and feed, could be safe, I do my part. If I've got 30 acres, I could do even more. But if everybody did just a little bit, it would help all the fragmented habitats. It would help the bees tremendously. So bees love yellow, blue, purple, white, pollen that's easily released from the anther. A good nectar source. A lot of times when plants aren't native and they're hybridized, the nectar is not as nutritious, maybe not the same amino acids and protein. So they're going to get a better deal if you give them native plants. Again, the southern carpenter bee. And a lot of times you can learn what plants they like just by observing them. This one likes this one likes this one. There's some plants that all of them like. Pretty much everybody likes cone flowers, right? Even bumblebees, they're not too big to sit on a cold cone flower. But a lot of times for the little tiny bees, it's good to have little tiny flowers. And for some bigger bees, bigger flowers. You need a continual source of food. 3 species in bloom, spring, summer, fall. Use masses of color to attract. So imagine if the bees are flying over looking for food, and they look down and they see, oh, wow, there's a lot of color there. I'm going to try that. Especially if there's a big blob of color. Little bees can only fly maybe 500 feet. Excuse me. Bumblebees can fly up to 3 miles and honeybees up to 5 miles, but they use precious energy flying around looking for sources of food. So single species and big blobs. I don't know, what would they like better? This one?
Mixed plant.
Or the mixed planting? I would think the mixed planting, because they're all different kinds of flowers and colors and shapes, sizes. Included diversity. Oh, I was talking about that a minute ago. And use locally native plants to support more abundant species. And use more than cultivars. This was my backyard. I guess when I first moved in, I tried to put some plants out. And then I started learning about bees and butterflies, and it got a little better. And every year I add a little bit more. I try to find out what flowers are going to be best for them. And some of the flowers, you know, no matter how many times you try to plant them, they just don't grow. They just, you know, they have a mind of their own. Milkweed, native milkweed is an especially great plant for bees. And some flowering trees, holly, dogwood, eastern redbud, Mexican plum. These are Montgomery County. And some native shrubs and flowers. You probably know all of these plants. This is just a partial list. That's a pretty bumblebee. These are bumblebees mating on thistle. And this is one of my side yards. This is all mistflower and goldenrod, and the bees go nuts. They just go nuts in the fall. And so do the butterflies and the wasps. And this whole place is just, it's like the whole plant, the whole area is buzzing. If you have to use pesticide, use it very carefully. So a lot of chemicals make bees more susceptible to virus. Fungicides, herbicides, not just insecticides. And keep in mind the time of day. It's best to use pesticides early in the morning or late, right before dark, when bees aren't foraging. And keep in mind that if you use a dust formulation, dust sticks right to the bee's fur. And she's got that electric static charge, so she's going to bring it in and carry it around. So I wouldn't use Seven Dust. I know a lot of people recommend Seven Dust, but I would stay away from it. Herbicides and fungicides too. Tolerate some damage from the leafcutter bee. Develop a tolerance for weeds. I like dandelions. I don't know if anybody else does, but it's an important early nectar source for bees. And there's some other flowers that you would think, oh no, I've got to mow those, you know, or got to get the weed and feed out. But bees are depending on that, especially when they first get out of the nest. They don't have much energy at that point. And invite beneficial insects to manage the pest. Develop a nest habitat for ground bees. Of course, that's easier said than done. And develop some habitat for bumblebees. This box here, I got one year, a few years ago from the University of Nebraska. They had developed it and they were going to see if you put that in the yard, you put some soft cotton in it, if bumblebees would use that as a nesting. But I had it for 3 years, nobody ever came. Here's that. This is Greg's muley, which I think is really pretty. We've got that in the front yard. And tolerate old snags like this, old stumps. That's where they don't even have to work to get it there because the beetles have already bored a hole. And you can also have these nesting tubes. I want to say something about that. This is a list of plants for captive nesting bees. And I think that's on the resource list. And if it's not, I can give you the list. You can use these cut bamboo pieces. But beware of the commercial pot products for these nesting tubes, because a lot of times the tubes are glued in. You can't get them out. What happens is when you can't clean them from season to season, they get full of mites and parasites, viruses, bacteria, and they also are taken over by wasps a lot of times. A lot of times the bee doesn't know. She's just going to go in there and lay her eggs. This is what a bee that's covered in mites, looks like. And sometimes they affect her so much she can't even fly. They're called hairy-footed mites.
Hey Susie,
Mhm.
so what should we do? So if we have little tubes and we're making that kind of nest,
Yeah,
don't glue them together? I mean, give us some tips.
I'm gonna show you.
Okay.
If I can walk over here for a minute. I got this one. I don't know where, I probably got it online. And it's cute. It's painted, doesn't need to be good. But these are all glued in. So unless you line these holes with some clean paper, and you can do that if the hole's not too small, then you could take it out at the end of the season, see where the cocoons are, and see if you've got a mite problem. Also, this is a house that I also found on Amazon, and it's got little tubes.
Can you show it to the online folks as well?
How do I do that?
I don't know if we can do that.
I think it's in front of the owl. In front of the owl.
Like where?
Oh,
Right there, back up a little bit.
owl. Okay,
How's that?
can you? is that-
No, oh, yeah, that, well, I can see Sue, but not, I can't see the house.
You can see
Sue.
So.
Up or down?
Up.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I took one of these tubes out of here, and these are made from cardboard, and they have a liner in them. So you can get replacement liners. So at the end of the season, you can just put a new liner back in and put it back in the house. And I have tape on this because the last time I tried to show this, the tubes went everywhere. But I think that's a better solution. It's also made with natural untreated wood.
So what about a plastic like straws or something that you
Not
could?
plastic, if you
Okay.
could find some paper straws, but I don't, who makes paper straws anymore? I've looked.
But yeah, you,
Natural reeds are the best. You can get natural reeds in different sizes. Mason bees need a different size than leaf cutters.
Yes, thank you.
So if you get natural reeds, which are fairly cheap, you use them once, compost them, get some new ones in and start again every year. So keep.
What
the
about
whole-
bamboo?
Change the reeds every year.
Well, bamboo is a natural reed. Which kind of reeds were you talking about before? Well, different sizes, so.
I couldn't tell you the biological name. of
And
them,
you
but-
could look it up. There are different specifications for.
So a mason
Yes.
bee needs 8 millimeters, a leaf cutter bee needs
Yeah.
5 to 6 millimeters.
Mhm.
So depending what bee you want to attract, you put different
Yes.
sizes in.
You had a question?
What about just like the blocks of wood that you drill holes in and that kind of thing?
Yes, I showed, I think that was on, I think it was, right. One of these. There's no, that's not the wood block. Oh, there's a wood block. Yeah, you can make that and you can make the holes at different size. Of course, it's the same principle. You still would have to line it and take the cocoons out at the end of the season and then put some new liner in. But that seems like a really easy way to do it. If you just have a block of wood and you could put different size holes in it.
If I can just speak
Sure.
a second. These that you see here that split in two, those are designed to split open, so you can clean the grooves out
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
every
that's-
year, and you can clean out all the bacteria and the mites. If you you find them in garden centre, just logs with different size holes drilled in, death traps for bees, because basically you can't get in there and clean anything, and all the little bee mites stay in there from year to year and contaminate the bees as they go in and out of those tubes. So those are a complete disaster, and do not ever use those. But these, they've got the splits in, you can split those apart and clean the grooves every year with soap or some type of
Yeah, well,
cleaner.
what do you clean it? What would you clean it with? That wouldn't harm you?
Water.
Just water. Like
Just
a
a
brush.
little brush,
Like
a little
brush.
brush is basically what you brush it all with and clean it all off and you get down to the wood again.
So no soap or hydrogen peroxide or?
Typically not, I mean, you scrub it with a brush and clean them out. I've got these things and they're very easy to clean and you pull them apart and just scrub them out every year and you
Where
can
do you get
reuse them.
those, Steve? The ones that pull apart?
The site that I use, and you probably get it, I don't know whether you know,
I saw them on Amazon,
if you go to Crown Bees,
Crown Beef.
Crown Bees is a fantastic site, got everything that you ever want to buy or use for mason bees and leaf-fetted bees and things like that. I mean, outstanding. And they have newsletters and updates and things like that going on all the time. So Crown Bees, Google that one, go on that site and you'll be blown away.
Yes.
When do you change or when you clean the level 2 or replace the 2?
Yeah, when is season over and you clean it?
Well, I'm talking from a mason bee perspective. You actually harvest the eggs and you harvest the cocoons and save them all winter in your fridge. And then you put them back out and they'll hatch the following year and you start the whole process all over again. So typically you'll be doing the harvesting of the cocoons and the cleaning in the autumn, in September, October, around this type of area.
So are you gonna give us bumblebee racing for dummies book?
Sorry.
Do you have a resource to recommend for us?
Oh, yeah, in the resource list, I've got a lot, it has to be updated, but there's a lot of that in there.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, I have a card over here and I can help you. And we do have we still have the Texas Bumblebee site on Facebook, where you can post pictures of your bees, and a lot of people get confused between a carpenter bee or a bumblebee. So there are people to help you identify it. And also it's good to put what county you're in and what time, because if you could name the floral resource, that's even better. So we don't want the bees to look like that. That looks awful. Okay, there's also Bumblebee Watch, the interactive app that can help you identify bumblebees. And you just go through a series of, choose as all yellow as that spot. That's kind of cute. And this is a Texas Bumblebee. Facebook has tried to monetize it and it has changed so many times. It's hard for me to use it now, actually. But it's still useful if you want to get your pictures of your bees out there and make sure you've got the right identifier. And that's the end. Anybody have any other questions?
Questions? Yeah. One of my questions is
Oh, I'm
that,
sorry.
yeah, let her ask. We have those carpenter bees. Ask it in the microphone.
The big carpenter bees?
Yeah, we have those big carpenter bees that drill the holes in our pergola, and what's the best way to get them to go away?
Well, that's not an easy question. But a lot of people will say if you leave some soft wood out, that's easier for them to drill. And a lot of people say paint it or stain it, they're not going to use it, but they still paint it. So I would put some soft wood for them.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that was another question I had pertaining to the same type of bee, because we keep having them all over, drilling into our porch, which I don't mind, but my husband hates it. But I was wondering, so
Husbands are like,
if they didn't have the porch, what are they out there doing this in the trees?
oh,
or-
sure. Yeah, snags, dead trees. Little bits.
What's snag honey?
Snag honey. Yes. I guess maybe when somebody cuts down the tree, because I used to have some stumps from a tree that they had to cut down, a pine tree back then, which is soft. And after a while, we couldn't use it anymore. There were so many holes because there are a lot of insects that need that kind of protection. So that's a help. I can't give you a sure answer. I mean, I know pesticide, good. And if you Google that, that's what you're gonna come
Yeah,
up with.
my
as
husband
well.
was just like, they need to find something else to go to, and I So I always wondered, like, if the house wasn't there, where would they be? I guess on the tree, digging into the tree or,
A dead tree.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I have
Just
comments
just
on
something that may interest people here. You mentioned about mason bees being more better pollinators than honeybees. The figure I always use is about 60 times better. And the reason for that actually is that the mason bee has got hair all over its body. So when you see a mason bee land in a flower, if you ever see a video of it, it goes in and literally belly flops in the flower and you see all the pollen fly everywhere. So the mason bee gets the pollen all over its body. It's then an unselected pollinator. It'll go to the next flower and the next one, and it's a very, very busy bee. And all that pollen's on its body, so it pollinates a lot more effectively as it goes to flower. Whereas a honeybee will land, it lands delicately, it puts all that pollen into its sacs because it's going to try and go and make honey. And then when it comes off the flower, it cleans itself before it goes to the next flower. So when it goes to the next flower, it's not covering all of this pollen that a mason bee is, it's got it all over. So that mason bee goes a belly flop here, and it belly flops there, and it belly flops there, and all that pollen is being transferred flower to flower to flower. Whereas a honeybee is saving that to take back to the nest, and it cleans itself between the flowers. And that's why mason bees are phenomenal pollinators compared with honeybees.
Good answer. Because it's. Anybody else?
She's got some online questions that you,
Okay.
Carolyn can tell you the question.
Should I review the line?
She can look at it to say the question, but you're gonna have to say the answer.
I have to say the answer. It's up to you.
There we go.
So I have a question from Denise online. She says, we know neonics are systemic, so we have to be careful when buying plants. My question is regarding perennial plants. Will the neonic persist season after season?
I'm afraid they do. I can't tell you exactly, but I know you have to be careful, especially in big box stores. Sometimes plants will have a tag that says, "We protected this plant for you," which means we've sprayed it with a neonic that is systemic. And we've seen, I mean, you've seen flowers with dead butterflies around it or dead bees. So I would stay away from that. I like to go to plant stores where I can talk to somebody and they actually know about their products and can tell me if they've been treated or not.
Okay, the next question I have is, if you wanted to make a cavity bee house by drilling holes in wood, what size drill bit should you use? But wait. The next answer says, TPWD has a publication showing a pollinator box for solitary bees. 5 16-inch diameter holes, 1 1/4 inch deep, spaced an inch apart. But then I have a question that says, what is the optimal size range of the tubes? HEB has paper straws, and a very good one from Chuck says, native bees vary greatly in size. Please answer everybody. It says, the bigger the bee, the larger the diameter and greater depth they require for their nest hole. Drill holes ranging from 1/8 to 1/2 inch in diameter into the end of each block or log, spacing them about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch apart. Holes larger than 1/4 inch should be 5 to 6 inches deep, while holes 1/4 inch or smaller should be 3 to 5 inches deep, because Chuck knows. So did that sound about right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've never done it, but I've noticed for years that there are different specifications for
Yeah.
different bees.
But once he's done all the drilling, he needs to create a paper insert for a liner for each of those holes. So you're not, you can't just drill a bunch of holes and say I'm done. You've got to be able to clean that out every year.
Well, unless he's gonna harvest the mason bee cocoons, and then he still needs to clean it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need the paper tube to be able to pull it out to get the cocoons out. Otherwise, you destroy them trying to get them out of the solid
what
color.
kind of paper do you use?
Just cardboard, I mean. You can buy that, again, if you go to Crown Beach, you can buy the liners that pull in and out if you wish.
Yeah, the kind that I have.
The kind like you have.
Yeah.
Like similar to what she has there in this.
Yeah.
I got a question. if I
Then
can
they
throw
have a
out.
little liner.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Yes.
Well, multiple species tolerate, I mean, assuming they have the right diameter of tubes, will they tolerate each other and a thing like that?
Well, wasps are pretty aggressive and you will.
Well,
find-
wasp, but I'm thinking about cutter bees versus, I mean, the other types of bees, mason bees. Will they tolerate one another and
In the
creating
same
nests
house.
in these?
Well, the nest there, the bees that are nesting are asleep, so I don't.
But I mean,
need a
you
female
got
to come in and
maybe
spray.
30 tubes there,
Mhm.
and you have more than one species
Oh, yeah.
using the tube.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
No?
well, not the same tube, but different tubes.
Oh, yeah, different.
I mean, they're not trying to protect that nest.
Well, there's gonna be a cap at the end.
Right, when they're done, they cap it and
After
they're
they
gone
lay all the
after
eggs.
that, right? So-
Mhm. Did-
sorry.
Mason bees will always go back to the same hole. So if you've got multiple ones of bees, if you've got the wooden ones, you'll typically burn a pattern across the front face of that. And then the bee, when it flies in, will recognize that pattern and fly towards the pattern that takes it to its particular hole. And then when it gets close enough, it can smell which its own hole is because it's left its own scent on. So
Right.
at first, it looks for the visual clues to fly to its hole, and then it uses the scent. But you'll not get two different mason bees using the same tube.
What could you get? Well, I understand, I'm not questioning that, but could you have like 3 different species using different tubes in the same
Yes,
box?
yes, you could.
But they
Yes, you could.
Okay.
But you won't get leaf cutters and mason bees at the same time, because the one's a summer bee and one's a spring bee.
Okay, that's, okay, good point, Steve.
What's your name?
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Steve did his graduation. What year did you graduate, Steve?
20, I'm glad someone remembers it.
So Steve did his graduation presentation on the Mason Bee.
Oh,
So if you want to see his presentation, we
Yeah.
have it recorded on the Heartwood chapter
oh, I would love to see
website
that.
for the graduation. Yes,
You do?
I think we do. Did we never record it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, is it copyrighted?
Oh.
Do you want to see?
He does. I thought we might have forgotten to record the graduation that year. Did we record it?
I thought we did,
I thought we did.
but maybe not the presentation.
That was COVID. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Your slide where you had the clump of white flowers and then the mixed flowers. Generally, when bees go out, that particular day, they will only go to one kind of flower. So if you're gonna have the mixed flowers, you need to have like, well, sort of clumps or several.
Honeybees will.
Other bees will too. I was watching one in my yard the other day.
I'm not sure.
And it was going to the little white wild onions, skipping over the white dewberries and going to the thing. So if I were to have a mix, and I love mix.
Well, if they're specialists, they're gonna need to do that, go to the same place. But a lot of them are generalists, but they will pick, I mean, if there's that many choices there, it makes sense that they would go to the same flower, then move on to another.
Well, that's how they pollen, if you're taking, you have to take pollen from poppy to another poppy.
Yeah, it has to go from one
So
flower.
they generally will work one kind of flower. Tomorrow, that bee may work another.
And that is one of the reasons the mason bee is, again, it's not discriminated by it goes between every different type of flowers, whereas honeybees and other bees will go to a particular source back and forwards. So again, that enhances the mason bee as a pollinator, it goes between everything. Exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, we're drawing to the end. I thought I had, okay, we're going to do the draw. Oh, speaking of drawing to the end, we're gonna do the drawing. Meanwhile, the timing for the chapter business and the AT. Wait, Melissa, just 1 second. Oh, we got some last minute, we have some last minute ticketers. I'm gonna have to start taking that up.
Can I just say one more thing?
Okay, yes,
Sorry, I'm sorry to go in.
I forgot to tell y'all. Oops, my bad.
That I brought some books here that would be really good be really good resources for you. One on bumblebees, one on attracting native pollinators by the Xerces Society, and one of my favorite, bees in your backyard, that will help you identify whatever bee you have and how they live and what they need, and pollinator friendly gardening. So those should be on the resource list.
And the resource list is next to where you signed in. If you didn't pick up a copy, okay?
Yes, the resource list is back there on the back table where you signed in. Oh, Melissa, so we had, it seemed like it was about 20 minutes for chapter business. So what's our breakdown for the 0.25 for chapter business tonight? And then what, an hour and
15.
1.25 for AT? Okay, everybody get that?
For chapter meeting, it was what?
For chapter business, it was 0.25, right?
0.25 or 1.25.
0.25 for chapter business, 1.25 for AT.